Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dog Classroom podcast. I'm Anne-Marie.
And I'm Amelia.
And today we are actually going to talk about the uses as well as how to train our dogs to go to mat or go to bed.
Right.
Yeah. So I think to start, before we get into it, let's talk a little bit as to why. Come here,
Yeah, so with the go to mat, I actually really like it. I find it's one of the behaviors I use a lot, not just at home, but also when I'm out and about. So like when we go camping and we go to agility trials and we do stuff outside.
So let's say it's more than just having it a permanent fixture in your family room.
Right, yeah. So I don't always use a dog bed, and I know we're going to talk about that because you brought some different examples, but it can be anything, and we're going to talk about how to generalize it a little bit. But basically what it is telling your dog to go to a specific spot, whether it's a dog bed, whether it's a blanket on the ground, a spot on the couch, whatever.
Right.
And because we've trained it how we've trained it, they can stay there until we release them or give them a certain cue that means they can get up and
right. So to
whatever.
Summarize it, because a lot of times, again, like I said, we're going to go through it, how we train it. But a lot of times in classes, people want to cue every single step.
Right.
But to me, actual go to mat is a series of different behaviors sort of labeled in one cue.
Right, and when I'm doing it in class, I tell people, like, we're not going to name this until we have the actual behavior that we want to name, which is finding the mat, like going and driving toward it, getting onto the mat, laying down when they get there, and then staying. So all of those things are part of the one cue, which is go to mat. So it's like a behavior chain.
Right, and then the other thing with it too is anytime, we're talking about verbal cues, they don't necessarily have to be our suggestions. Like some people like settle, some people like go to bed, that sort of thing. So in just revisiting what Amelia said at the beginning is, and we'll probably sum it up again at the end, but really encourage people to move it around and take it with you.
Right.
Because what you're doing is creating, Maui knows the treats are behind the book. What we are is creating a behavior that we're hoping that they can repeat in multiple environments. The other thing is we're actually rewarding the dog for being calm and staying in one location and settling there. So we're making that, we're encouraging the dog to make that association so that then you're able to take the mat dog bed with you to different locations. And what I find, especially with smalls, possibly, is that then it's something familiar.
Right, yeah, and any anxious dog, sometimes having that will help. A thought popped into my head while you were saying that is, when I'm also teaching this to clients and their dogs, I always like to say it should be a behavior that you can actually use, because what we get stuck on, and I know we're going to talk about this more, is just standing there and cueing everything like down and then treating, and we never actually grow it into a behavior that we can say, okay, go to mat, and then actually do the thing that we want to do.
Yeah.
And this was a topic of conversation actually in class this past weekend, where they were saying, I was like, what would you like to be able to do that you can't currently do? And it would be like cook dinner without the dog being under my feet while I'm trying to carry stuff, or answer the door without the dog running and jumping on the guest, or like, and all these different scenarios where I'm like, but have you trained in that scenario? Have you done it in that scenario? Have you trained for that? Because you can't just expect it when the thing is actually happening. You have to train for it.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with like the very basics of what like prerequisites do you need for go to mat?
Okay, so honestly, prerequisites are treats, kibble, and then an actual bed. So what I would thought today, Mao, come here, buddy, is just bring 3 different styles. I like to always joke with clients in that if they haven't bought a dog bed, or I do suggest, is that I believe my dogs have a preference.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So instead of us picking out the bed, and because we joke a little bit in that the client goes and buys the $100 orthopedic bed and the dog lays beside it.
Right.
Right? So take them shopping.
Yeah.
Yep. Like, honestly, what I do is I take the different beds, we pull them off the shelf, and then we sort of let them, already you could see Maui at the beginning, I was cueing a little bit to the raised bed, and do you see he's going actually for the little, he's going to the small one. He seems to like the edges to curl in there. So like I said, this is more like what we would call like a kennel mat, where some of them like it. This is actually a small, but trust me, if he wanted to, he would fit in it. He likes anything with the edges. But this is where we talk a little bit about a raised bed, which is nice, you know, for camping.
Yeah.
It folds up like a lawn chair. But these are handy to use outside, or to technically get them off the ground, because I know we use it a lot for agility, for like stationing, because then they're not on the ground, you know, with the mosquitoes or the bugs, but or even if it's raining, like they're sort of off and dry and sort of up. I also find dogs sometimes they value being up a little bit sometimes, because I know a lot of clients' dogs, when we have their raised beds in the training space, that
they like them.
Yeah, they gravitate more to them just because they're a little bit up, and I don't know, I think they just prefer a lot of them being a little bit more up.
I find with the raised beds too, like it gives them a very clear like edge of like where they're supposed to stay. Do you know what I mean? Like if we just toss a blanket on the floor, they're like, well, can I be half off the blanket? Can I be on the blanket?
Yeah. So they're either like on or off. Yeah, I get that. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just going to move some of these. What we do sometimes in our household is to cushion this up a little bit.
Right.
Is we'll actually put, you know, the mat bed there. Or Maui seems to be gravitating to this one a little bit today, so I think I'm going to switch it out and just do that, where I know he'll go there just for the whole space scenario. Come here, buddy.
Okay. So why don't we start with like very beginnings? What would you teach to a brand new dog?
So what we're going to do, obviously he knows it, because Amelia and I use it extremely frequently in our households. All my guys have go-to-mat. So the idea with that is I train go-to-mat with each dog individually.
Yes.
Right?
Multi-dog household stuff. We have to teach them all.
Right. So that they're actually able to move there and stay there for a period of time. So I teach it individually, and then we start to teach it as a group. So where I start with is I have my kibble or my treats. Okay, we're gonna assume maybe that Maui doesn't necessarily have value for this, but what we want everyone to, we're in the studio, so it's not like, you know, I'm gonna walk back and forth like 10 feet, that sort of thing. I think gonna go down on my knees just for camera purposes here. But so what we're gonna do is actually bring him away, and we're gonna create like momentum or drive through it. So then we're going to move onto the mat. Once he's up over here, then I'm gonna toss.
Okay, so I'm thinking for like people at home brand new to this, they don't have value to the mat. So how can we create value for being on that space instead of on top of your lap or poking at the cookies?
So in going back to sort of what we like to do sometimes, you know what, actually, I'm just gonna do this, is I'm gonna get you to hold him for just a second, because he's more than willing to participate. What we do is we plant. Oh, there we go. We plant a cookie. The reason why we plant a cookie rather than the mistake I find that people make, come on, Bee, up, is they sort of lure the dog, which we're gonna talk about later, but they lure the dog there, and the dog to me isn't actually looking at the dog bed.
Right, and I want it to just be something where they're like, wow, the cookies are available from this space, from this surface. Whereas when we're treating from our hand, they're more focused on us and what we're doing, as opposed to actually looking for the bed that we want them to have value in.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get you to hold him again. I'm gonna put my treat and make sure block B here. And then we're just gonna move him on, and then he eats the treat off the mat. So what they learn is when they're on the mat or the dog bed, it's actually producing treats. Like they're guaranteed to have them there. So again, I'm gonna have you hold him there, my cookie, move him back, and he drives right there. So do you see, like, again, he's looking at it. He's not looking at me. That's what I want. I don't want attention as I'm walking towards it. I want him looking.
And I think in class when we do that, and when I've seen people do it in private lessons and at home and whatever, if you don't have like a helper to hold the dog or walk away with them on leash, you can either have them like doing something over here, playing with
Search
a toy,
cookie.
whatever.
So
search
I
cue.
can totally do a search cookie, toss.
And then, yeah, you're sort of helping him a little bit, pointing it out because of the context that we're in. But if you're in your living room and that's like their regular bed and you're like, hey, look, there's some stuff on there, they might just start going over there and looking, which we like.
Okay, so then once we have them sort of moving towards the mat, what I like to do right away, and I think most of us do, is I like to right away almost create a stay. It's not like a one cookie game.
Yes.
Right?
Understand.
Because if it's a one cookie game, all they learn to do is take the one treat and get off.
leave.
We actually want to stay.
Yeah.
We want them to stay there for a period of time. So it's not a one cookie game. So once we get him moving on there, he's up. I'm going to toss the treat on there. Now, I'm going to attempt to try to keep him there. Come on, up on your mat. There we go. And then what I'm gonna do is just toss. So in talking about how many treats should I be tossing?
Anywhere between 2 to 10. That's what I like to say. Because if you always go 3, then the dog learns, okay, 1 treat, 2 treat, 3 treat, and then I can get up. So in talking about all of these separate pieces that we're doing, right now you're building the stay. He offered you the down because he knows that's what's expected. Right. But let's say he didn't have the down. How would you get him to do that so that he could stay there?
So I think what I would do again is I would move towards the mat. Once he sort of put a foot or something, I would put that treat in, which I'm tossing that treat in. I know my back's to you here. I would toss the treat in, just a few to say, yes, I like where you are. And then what I would do is try to bring him up a little bit more. I'm going to cue the down with my hand signal or verbal, and then sort of try to back up and toss.
Right, so it does start as giving a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of cues to the dog. But what we're seeing is that now that he sort of knows that, because of the scenario that we're in, he will offer you that down, and that's what eventually we are wanting for the client dogs and for the people who are watching at home, is to go, okay, yes, initially I do have to bring the dog over, show them where to be, ask them to lay down, give them a bunch of treats for doing it, and then we sort of back off and it becomes a one cue.
So the idea is people, again, think, we send them there once. Are you going to have to get up and down several times to possibly bring them there? Yeah, because we always say they have so much value here because that's where we give all the treats. And now what we're doing is asking them to go over there. So that's another thing I just wanted to point out for a second, without exaggerating it and standing up and roaming around, is if I'm using this mat here, actually B, you can come into play here, buddy, is I'm gonna throw B out there. And what a lot of people do is they flip around so they call the dog towards them.
Okay.
Right? And this is my joke a little bit why we put the mats up against the wall in the training space. We really want to encourage you guys to send
not
the dog,
call.
not call. Hence we put the mats and so forth up against a wall. So if I could get B off of here, oh, Nemo's gonna get up. Okay, if I put this over here and then send, do you see how, again, he moved? Come on your mat.
Yeah, I think we need to do that again without Maui in the...
Yeah, look, now his butt's in the air there. There we go, nice job. Okay, go to mat. So the idea is he's moving away from me and then tossing.
Right, because we always, a lot of people want to give the treat to the dog from their hand. And so then we're teaching them, hey, come to my hand to get the treat instead of stay on the mat and the treat will come to you.
Right.
And that's what I always try to say when people are saying, oh, I'm trying to eat dinner. I don't want to be feeding the dog under my feet. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't be. You should be at least sending them to mat a few feet away and tossing something to them. It's not a bad thing to share your food with your dog within reason or whatever, but it's about the context. If you teach them that they jump on you and they get food and you will feed them, as opposed to you go over here and the food will come to you.
Right.
Right? We can't always be feeding it from our hand.
No, so if we actually reward them in a separate location, which is in the mat, on the other side of the table, they're not going to sit and be jumping at the table. They're going to be sitting on their mat waiting for the cookies
Exactly.
to fly from the sky.
Yeah.
Right?
And so while we're sort of rewarding this, building up the stay in those scenarios, I know we've talked about it before, but the 3Ds do come into play with the mat as well.
Yeah.
So if you're asking your dog to stay and you have a steak dinner on the table, that's going to be heavy distraction, right? So that's going to be really, really hard. You would want to teach that sort of separately first in that location with, like, I always tell people, you can take a paper plate and put it on the table in front of you, and the dog doesn't know, right? It's just, it doesn't have all the smells of the food and everything.
Done that, yeah.
And you just practice, okay, I can be sitting on this chair, I can have a plate in front of me, and you can be on your mat.
Right.
And then we build up to, okay, yes, now there's actually food on the plate, and we build in that distraction. Because sometimes it's a little too hard.
Yeah. The other thing, so again, I just sent Maui there. And like I said, for the purposes at home, I might be at the other side of the kitchen.
Right.
I might be at the other side of the family room. That's what we're practicing. One of the D's is distance.
Yes.
And right. And the other thing is when we add the verbal cue, we actually want them to understand what it is and look for it. So it's almost like a find, sort of a search thing. Because I know I use it to play once in a while where I say, go to Matt or go find it. And the funny thing is, what do they end up?
Searching.
I know. What do they end up laying on? Like sometimes they'll find like a tea towel or a towel on the floor, or they'll just lay on the area rug. Maui, come on.
I know. She told you to find it, and there was no search cookie there. That's so mean.
There we go.
Yeah. No, and I think like also building the duration of the stay is another one that we don't maybe necessarily work on a whole ton because it's not that exciting.
On your mat.
You're asking your dog to stay for a longer period of time in between getting cookies and everything. And, you know, it's hard for a lot of people to go from feed to, okay, I'm actually going to do something, right? I'm going to use this behavior. I'm going to send them to Matt. I'm going to go get the food out of the oven and put it wherever, and the dog is still staying. So we're adding, like, all those 3Ds are coming into play with one scenario, which I'm just talking about the kitchen because that's where people like to do it.
Yeah, because the tricky thing with training, and again, encouraging people to do multiple levels because you need to introduce the behavior first. But the thing with training, again, is, Maui, is building on it. Yeah, he's just hot in here today, is being able to build on it. Building on it means not standing in front of them and staring and making that eye contact, where you actually want them to be able to do something while we're not focused on them.
Exactly.
Right?
So we can take our attention off of them, do what we need to do, and they're still going to do the behavior that we're asking because we've built the duration. So like, let's say another example is our camping. When we use this, when we go to agility trials, we go camping, whatever, we want the dog to actually stay there while we're like chit-chatting with our friends and like going in and out. And
so hence this past summer when we went traveling and we took the dogs, I brought the mat, and what they would do is we would go to different restaurants that had patios or outdoors, and the dogs settled under the table on the mat. So that's a prime example where they were able to associate with something. And trust me, I was not walking around with something substantial like this. I was just walking around with like almost like a tea towel just to mark the spot. Again, it was warm out. Some people use cooling mats. That's just another kicker there. But what I would do is get them settled under the table and then reward them for that. So again, we were practicing go to mat in a different sort of environment as well. Hence the distraction, right?
The distraction, and then also like the generalization piece. So if we teach this and we only ever teach it in the kitchen, or we only ever teach it in the living room, we cannot then bring that mat to a restaurant and say, yep, you know this, you're gonna do it here.
Right.
Absolutely not, right? Because that's a totally different environment. And even here, like, at home, when we do go to mat, he's not getting up and like questioning, is this the right thing, and going to the different mat.
Yeah.
Here he seems like it's a little bit less clear.
Yeah.
And I don't actually know if he hasn't had this raised bed here before.
No,
so this
I
is
think-
probably very weird for him.
Yeah, and in the past when we've been here, I think we honestly just brought something simple like this or something. Yeah, so,
Yeah.
you know, even though it looks like, well, I don't want to say it looks like, but the thing is he's sort of a little bit more off and on, is Amelia's just pointing out the whole idea of distraction. But again, it's, as soon as I stop feeding, you'll notice he sort of gets up and down. Yeah, he is an older dog, but the thing is trying to find the reinforcement schedule that he's able to stay there in this environment.
Which he hasn't done before. And
Right.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, yes, we could take the time and train it and get him used to being here, because he is going to be coming here.
Maui.
So why don't we work through the steps a little bit? We've just done building value for the mat. We've done going toward the mat. It's also a little confusing because we're using several different ones right now. But at home, like, I have 1,000,001 dog beds, and they get used to it, right? It's just
Yeah,
go
they do.
to whatever one you feel like going to, essentially.
Yeah.
So we've done that. What about adding a release cue so that it's more clear for him when he's supposed to get up?
Right. So again, in talking about when we say go to mat, to me it means walk over there, get on, find the mat, go find the mat,
Stay there, lay
stay
down.
there, go into a down, and then stay there until we release you. So I do use the same release cue as I would for a sit stay.
Right.
So, you know, being more formal with it is once, especially with training, break. And then I give my release cue, and then he gets up and off.
So when you say break, the dogs know that they're allowed to get up at that point.
Correct.
Or that you want them to get up at that
Yep.
point. And I find with the release cue, it's important not to use something like okay or
Right.
good dog.
Yep.
Like things that you're going to say in conversation anyway. Because I see that all the time where people are like, well, the dog keeps getting up. And I'm like, well, what's your release cue? And either, oh, I don't know, or it's okay, or...
Yeah. The reason
Something they're already
why
saying.
we try and steer, Maui, come here, steer you guys away from okay is because you may be in a conversation and you say the word and then the dog's up and gone and everybody's like, oh, I didn't release them. And it's like, actually it was blah, 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 okay. And then they know to get up. So yeah, they recognize the words, right?
They do,
Once
yeah.
you teach them.
And that's
So-
why I like break, because I'm never just in conversation and I'm going blah, 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 break.
Right.
The way that I say it, right?
But I did, one time it did happen to me where I was demoing in class and I said it and Maui got up off the table. I'm like, see?
Yeah.
When you say it in conversation. So, okay, how about we summarize?
Okay, so why don't you do like demo, whole
One-
thing put together.
Whole thing put together. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you him.
Oh, he's going to be mad about
No,
that.
but I'm gonna give you that. And then we're gonna do multi-dog here with two people. I'm gonna get down on the floor here with Maui. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have him over here. I think I just lost my mic. And then what we're going to do is, I think I'm gonna skip, actually, okay, no, we'll do this. So I'm gonna distract him.
Okay, we're distracting Maui. We're planting a treat on the mat.
Now I'm gonna encourage him to move this way.
So we're using a hand signal to encourage him to move toward the mat. He finds the treat.
Okay, so then I'm gonna bring him back, distract him.
We're doing another repetition. He's going toward, he's finding the treat.
Okay, and this time when I do one more, you're gonna notice that I'm gonna put it further on there.
Okay, so we're putting the cookie further onto the mat to encourage him to move his body more onto that mat.
Right, okay. Now, I know he's going there periodically.
Yes.
Okay, he has that. So this time I'm not gonna plant the treat. What he's gonna do is he's walking once he's on.
Get up there, buddy.
Okay,
He lays
I don't
down.
even have to cue the down, but that would be my second step. And then I'm tossing in there and rewarding the stay.
And then
notice,
you would give
Right.
him his cue.
right,
There you go.
and then
Beautiful.
releasing off.
Okay, so now that we have sort of a visual of what that looks like, then we can sort of summarize. So you're getting him to go there, you're building the value so that he wants to go there.
Yes.
You're delivering the treats onto the mat, not from your hand.
Yes.
You're placing the treat a little bit further on to show him that you do want his entire body on there. He's offering you a down because we've done that, but in general, when you're teaching it for the first time, you have to ask them for the down. You have to cue it, either verbal cue, hand signal, lure, whatever they have. And then once he's on there, it's not just one treat, it's multiple, and it's never the same amount. So it's not 3 treats and then release, it's maybe
Right.
2 treats one time and 10 treats another time.
And the other thing, is technically you have the treats behind here, but what I'm trying to do, honestly, is not have them in my hands. So I'm distracting him.
Right.
I'm trying to get him to do the behavior and get the treats because, again, how many clients try to get the dog to go to mat while they're holding the treats right there, and the dog knows they're there.
He thinks you threw
Right.
something.
Yeah, he thinks he threw something. So the thing is trying to have the clear hands. The other thing is I think this is a great exercise to allow the dog to think a little bit, right? So, and not what we say is, I don't want to say like over cueing. So what I want to do is once I bring him towards on the mat, I'm going to give him a few seconds to think, to offer the down.
Right.
Pause, he's there, then I'm going to treat. So
Yes.
I'm trying to let him think about what the next steps are because, again, being who we are, we want to like cue.
I always try to say too, like with the go to mat, you need to practice it in your different situations. They need to be comfortable with it, and we need to generalize it just like we do with everything else.
Yeah. So.
Great. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in. You can find us on our website at thedogclassroom.com and on social media at The Dog Classroom.
Thank you.